Welcome in to the Just Basketball Show for Wednesday, March 29th. I'm Chris Manning. Brendon Kleen's with me. We have Ricky O'Donnell, the man, the myth, the legend from SB Nation with us today. We're going to do a big 2022 NBA Redraft. If you haven't already, rate and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and all of your various social media platforms. We have a lot to get to just in the top. Not a lot, just a quick little speed run, and then we get to the big stuff, the 2022 redraft. Let's just start with, I think, the biggest bummer in the NBA right now, which is that Joel Embiid did not play in Denver on Monday night. Jokic is now the MVP favorite again. It's still pretty tight between him and Embiid. We'll see how the last stretch of this goes. But, Ricky, I want to ask you first, as our guest, scale of 1 to 10, how big of a bummer is it that Embiid does not get to play Jokic? And even if that doesn't provide the clarity or anything, just the fact that we didn't get it, that we didn't get that Monday night main event.
I'm gonna say that bummer is an 8.5 out of 10. It's a big bummer. I let out a noticeable sigh when I got the push alert from Woj that Embiid wasn't gonna play. It's a shame because I felt like this MVP race got real interesting at their last head-to-head matchup. I want to say that was on a Sunday afternoon, maybe a Saturday afternoon, a few months ago, earlier this winter, when Embiid kind of dominated that matchup. I mean, Sixers got a big win. Embiid was tremendous. Jokic, kind of an average to bad game by his standards. So would have been great to see him go at it again. I also think that a big part of Jokic's MVP case is just his durability. He doesn't miss games like this very often, or any games. So if you are a Jokic MVP backer, it sort of makes the point for you that Jokic is almost always available. Embiid's sort of been in and out of the lineup over the last few years. But it's just a bummer because it's fun to watch these two guys go at each other. They're both incredible players, regardless of how you feel about the MVP. So I'm sort of sick of the MVP. I kind of find it to be a very boring debate.
I can tell. I can hear it.
I almost hope Embiid wins, even though I think I would vote for Jokic. Just because, Jokic got 2 and Embiid's been there the last couple of years. Certainly he had really good cases. So I think objectively, I would probably give it to Jokic. But part of me is sort of hoping Embiid wins just because I find it to be a little boring to talk about. What do you guys think?
I mean, it was. I'll one up you. I'll say it was a 9 bummer. In my very scientifically crafted calculation there on how much of a bummer it was to not have these guys play, because I just think we were all sort of we had circled this one, right, and it felt like it was going to give us our last little juice of content through the rest of the season a little bit. But I also, look, I think the longevity, the durability point is the one that came to mind for me. It's Embiid, if he played the rest of the Sixers games, I think he gets to 67 games played. It's not like it's going to be some sort of lost season for him, but I just feel like he's running out of steam a little bit between the injuries and just, I watched him Saturday night play the Suns, and it was one of those Embiid games where you can tell that physically and he's either feeling pain or he's just tired, and mostly he's just going to try to get to the line, and that's going to be the game plan. And we've all seen those from him before, and so even when he has played lately, it hasn't felt quite the same as what it was during their win streak. So yeah, it's a little bit of a bummer, but I want to swing back to something Ricky said. Are you guys both push notification guys for Woj? Are we
no?
You allow it to come all the way to the front screen?
No,
Okay.
I don't. I turned off all notifications for Twitter because my brain is already goop enough, and I don't need that hitting me and just getting a innocuous Shams tweeting his FanDuel TV clips or something. I don't need that. I just don't.
I don't think I've had Twitter notifications on for years, so I was just surprised to hear that because I was like, that sounds incredibly overwhelming. I understand Ricky has a much more important job than either you or I, Chris, so it's probably partially related to that. But I feel like I would be sick if I had to see those gentlemen's tweets that consistently just jump into my life out of nowhere.
Important is not the right word to use about my job, but I have a job that requires me to be on top of breaking news, so I do look at it for that. Also, as I've gone into this more and more, I don't really like staring at Twitter. I'm just give me what I need to know, and they'll tell me what I need to know if there's some breaking news.
So it's a filtration system for you.
I'd rather do that than just stare at Twitter all day. So I
No,
don't
that's
know.
fair.
I mean, it's rough either way, but that's sort of where my head comes in at
When
it.
it's Twitter, there's not a good version of events, I don't think. Chris, any more thoughts on the MVP, or do we want to move on to really what, in my opinion, I know we're doing a 2020 redraft that's going to be fun, but I mean, the next thing we're talking about is kind of really why I'm here. It's why I chose to log on today.
Yeah, it's fair. I was like a 9.5, but like I did get to watch Ohio State, Virginia Tech like uninterrupted, and that was okay. I just sucks that we don't get these matchups all the time, and like I understand this for like very valid reasons with the playoffs close. It just kind of sucks, and like I would like for more of these matchups to happen and all that stuff. But okay, big story, big thing. The more exciting thing that isn't like, oh, like are we gonna have to talk about the MVP again? Is that Caitlin Clark just continues to be Caitlin Clark, and the ceiling feels limitless for her at this point in time. She is the first player in NCAA history with a 30 or 40 point triple double. She was already the first player to ever eclipse 900 points to 300 assists. If she just hits the same number of points next year, Brendon pulled this, she's going to hit the all-time record for NCAA women's basketball scoring. She is going to be draft eligible in 2024, and even though that class is going to have a lot of big names, Paige Beckers, Cameron Brink, Angel Reese, Haley Van Lith, I just can't imagine she's not the number one pick, and that team should be like trying to tank for Caitlin Clark in 2024 if tanking exists in that way in the WNBA. To me, the men's tournament obviously a little more chaotic. There's a lot more just kind of randomness in that tournament. But regardless of who the players are, and men or women, she feels to me like the star of March, and it doesn't feel particularly close.
Yeah, Ricky, I want to hear your thoughts on her because we've talked pretty much after every little moment and milestone of Clark's season this year. But
I'm preparing to go to Iowa next year to watch her play in person. I've decided that I should do this. I do have an uncle who like lives nearby, so like I have I don't have to buy a hotel, but this is how in I am. I want to go see her in person in Iowa, and because you're never gonna get to recreate that. You're just not.
That building gets pretty insane, so I don't think that would be a bad choice. But I wanted to add one more little stat nugget here because this came out after I prepped the outline, Chris. 2.5 million people watched the Iowa Louisville game that I saw from an airplane, but I was tuned in. I don't know if they count those. 2.5 million people, and the stat is that's more than any NBA regular season game has gotten in terms of viewership on ESPN this season, and that was on ESPN, not on ABC, whatever. So it feels like the basketball world is starting to agree with you, Chris, that she is really the show right now in this sport. But Ricky, tell us what you think about this person and how high are you putting the ceiling? Are you limiting kind of what you think she might be able to do in not only her senior season, but also when she becomes a pro?
Yeah, I think that's why this matchup against South Carolina is such a sick matchup, because Clark is unquestionably the most singular star in all of college basketball, men's or women's, right now. And she's going up against the best team in all of college basketball, men's or women's, in South Carolina, that has the presumptive number one overall WNBA draft pick in Aaliyah Boston. They're going for back-to-back titles. They're going for the perfect season. I wrote about this a little bit today, but I was looking back at how many undefeated national champions there were in women's college basketball. Since 2000, it's like 2 Brianna Stewart UConn teams, 2 Maya Moore UConn teams, 1 Diana Taurasi UConn team, and then Brittany Griner's Baylor team.
Baylor.
So essentially, you need a generation, like one of the best players of their generation, on your roster to go wire to wire. South Carolina, I think, has that in Aaliyah Boston. But they're going up against Caitlin Clark, who's just been so phenomenal offensively throughout her entire college career, and she just seems to be taking it to another level. She has that thing about her that, only the true greats have, like, speaking of, like, MJ, Luka, Kobe, where she's just, like, a psychotic competitor. And you could see it in, like, her little interactions with her teammates, with the officials, as she goes on. And, yeah, I mean, she's absolutely incredible. I think her ability to have positional size and then blend scoring and playmaking with scoring efficiency is just sort of unheard of at this stage of her, her age, her game. And, you know, I'm talking to you guys right now from Iowa. My girlfriend got a job out here, so she moved me to Iowa. And
Whoa!
I'm only staying here for
whoa!
1 year.
Okay.
I'm only staying here for 1 year. But one of the things I wanted to do, I'm living in Des Moines. I'm like, we got to go to Iowa City to watch Caitlin Clark. I don't care about anything else. We're going to Caitlin Clark. And the game we're going to is the regular season finale against Indiana. So we got down there. We're ready to do it, but we didn't buy tickets because the tickets were sold out. And I was like, yeah, let's buy them on StubHub. I'm checking the prices. I'm like, these are pretty expensive. Like, am I going to spend $300 on 2 tickets to watch her play? Because that's what they were going for. And eventually, I cheaped out because my girlfriend was like, she wasn't quite as invested as I was. It was going to be pretty expensive.
Yeah.
And I didn't pull the trigger. And she hits the game-winning shot. It was like the best clip of her entire college career coming off the screen. Hits the 3. I will never forgive myself. So let's just get that out of the way. But yeah, Chris, I too need to go see Caitlin Clark play because I blew my big chance this year. Also, I talked to her. I did a feature on her last year.
Yeah.
At the end of her sophomore year.
Yes.
And I think she's everything you read about her. Like, I talked to her high school coach at Dowling Catholic, which is the big high school in Des Moines where she's from. And just talk to some people around her, and they all just say, like, she sort of has that drive that the all-time greats have. Like, I don't even know how else to frame it or describe it. And then when you combine that with the size, the skill, she's the real deal. And it's been dope to see sort of sports fans at large embrace how great she is. At a level where, like, I feel like, you know, even a few years ago, a women's player would have had a hard time gaining that level of national acceptance. But it seems like Caitlin Clark's got it right now, and that's awesome. Can't wait to watch her against South Carolina. I think South Carolina is going to win that game easily. But maybe Caitlin Clark pops off for 50 and it's a different story. So we'll see.
Yeah, I was like plus 650 to win the whole thing.
Yeah, the line is 11.5. It's a bummer. I hope it's not that much of a blowout.
Yeah, that'll really suck if it's just like they get wiped. I was listening to Sabrina Merchant on Slate's sports podcast this morning. And she was talking about how, like, that team is, like, that Iowa team is full of, like, older players who really just, like, they're like, we have to do this. And, like, there's just, like, a mentality. And Caitlin Clark is in, like, the tip of that spear of that mentality. Just think about her future a little bit before we move on to the redraft. I know there will probably be a transition for her because, like, the last couple of guard prospects that we've seen go from college to maybe have had a transition. Kelsey Plum obviously was incredible at Washington. It took her a couple years to really get settled. It took Sabrina Ionescu like a little bit to really get settled, and some of that was COVID as well and the pandemic and that whole weirdness. But I kind of just like think she, like, even if it takes like a year for her to like fully adjust and all of that stuff, like, that is someone that, like, whoever gets her is just going to be set up for, like, 10 years if they can make it work with her. It just feels like she is, like, that kind of prospect. And, like, I know, Ricky, I was looking up teams where she could be fun, maybe, like, some Midwest stuff. I did see the Sky, like, don't have their first-round pick, so, like, unfortunately she can't go to Chicago, which would be, like, an obvious one. But, like, wherever she goes, it feels like the tour is just going to continue, and it feels like that franchise is just getting something that is just poised to continue to go and go and go and go. Like, Sue Bird going up and giving her, like, that kind of very public cosign was a really, really cool moment in the way that happened. And that, I just feel like we're going somewhere really, really high with Caitlin Clark.
I got a question for you guys.
Yeah,
it is.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. So I'll start with Brendon. Do you think it's difficult for a team led by such a high-usage superstar to win at the highest levels of the game? Her style of play very much reminds me of, and I hate to compare her to men's players, but this is just what's coming to mind, like James Harden's Houston Rockets, Luka's Mavericks, because she is like the singular heliocentric star. And everyone else on the floor, their job is to complement her. Obviously, it's different in the professional game than in the college game, just in terms of like the team building tactics and stuff. But do you think that, like, is she almost too much of a supernova where it's going to sort of be difficult for her to have true team success? Well, I mean, she's in the Final Four, so she's had hella success already. But, like, you know, I'm just thinking, like, to get true team success, do you need to not be quite as high usage as she is?
I was thinking about comps after that game too, and in college, but especially just in the W or in the men's NBA. What is she going to be like? Because I think on the broadcast they kept calling her a combination of Taurasi and Bird, and I think that's just like, here's some people whose names you recognize. I don't really see her as much of Diana Taurasi at all, personally. I guess maybe more recent Diana Taurasi, who wants to mostly just take pull-up threes, I guess you could say. But I was thinking of Tyrese Haliburton on the men's side. And very different in terms of the way that possessions end for those two players. And so I guess it's not a perfect comp, but I guess it speaks to how I think her game will evolve. And it's not to take anything away from the supporting cast at Iowa, because it is, Monica Zanano is very good. They have shooters around her and everything else. But I don't think it's quite the level of talent that she could get when she gets to the W. And I just feel like if she has more of an athletic roller, if she has, more dynamic, shooters who have real size and can attack closeouts, things like that, she's going to be more, I guess, I don't want to make it sound like she doesn't share the ball, because she also assists a ton too, but right. I think she'll get off of it more, and I think that she'll be able to fit into more of a system that isn't just solely built around her, because it's kind of built year over year, right? Like, as she's gone on in her career, she's built more and more usage up. I think, especially early in her career, I could see her being somebody that, comes off of screens, pushes the ball in transition, maybe runs some pick and roll, but is deferring to other players and is able to fit next to other stars and other scorers. I'm not worried about it personally, but what do you think, Chris?
I think that the way she plays, at least right now, it's like more energetic than like a Harden or a Luka. Like, she's more willing to, like, I think there is like the danger of the heliocentrism stuff, and if you lean too far into that puts you in a bad place. I'm very with you, Ricky. Like, I think that style of play is really hard to win with. I think like you're seeing that with Dallas to some degree right now. I think you obviously saw it with Houston as close as they got to making a really long run with that team. But I think like the way she's willing to just like play with the ball in her hands a ton, but give it up for passes to kind of like be a little bit of a chaos agent and not just like load up, I think it would give me some optimism. Like, I think the comp is like a Curry Haliburton hybrid. It's like can run around, bomb threes from everywhere, but like is willing to give up the ball to do other stuff. And that to me would be, let's see like how she like ages into like what she's going to be, and if that she has different tendencies, or if the first coach she gets in the W is like, we're just going to run like a ton of pick and roll with you and like let you ISO and like let you dominate things and play that way. But if she doesn't get pushed in that direction and she kind of plays how I think she organically plays right now, I wouldn't necessarily have those concerns.
Yeah, and I think Brendon made a great point just noting how deadly she is coming off screens. Like, she hit a couple threes off ATOs, I think, in that Elite Eight win. Obviously, her game winner against Indiana in that regular season finale was, off an ATO, catch and shoot. So she does seem much more willing to play off the ball than like Luka or Harden, who basically just like stand around, even though she has a similar ability to blend scoring and playmaking on the ball. But off the ball, that sort of seems where she separates herself from some of the other heliocentric talents we've seen come through the pipeline over the last 10, 15 years. So, yeah, she's going to have a fascinating career. She's obviously an awesome player.
I think of her like, with what the Mystics have. A bunch of dribble handoffs, a lot of wing athleticism, bigs who can do a little bit of everything, but largely play in the pick and roll. Like, her in a system like that, even if, like with or without Elena Del Don, maybe she fills that hole. I don't know. I mean, we're just imagining, but I'm saying a team like that, I could really see her blossoming in, because they share the ball already. They have some pieces to hide what maybe she's going to be limited at in terms of, being picked on defensively and whatever. She has a different assortment of bigs than what she has at Iowa. And I think the other part that we haven't said is she's just bigger than everybody that you would compare her to, right? Like, Bird is 5'9", Kelsey Plum is 5'8", Taurasi's 6 feet tall, so maybe that's part of what that comp is. But I think that size will really help her as well, just being able to round out what she's able to do, especially offensively. getting to the basket more consistently than some players. Seeing over the tops of defenses, everything else. So, I mean, I'm really excited. I don't want to heap too much expectation on her, but, I mean, we're talking about a generational talent for sure.
Also, have you guys noticed she's got some haters? That's the true sign that she's made it. When people can just be like, objectively, I don't know how her game's going to translate to the next level. Like, I have seen that from other college basketball fans.
I don't get it.
Who maybe think that, they talk about her too much during a game between, let's say, Michigan and Ohio State. It's like, why are we talking about Caitlin Clark during this game? We got great players in front of us. Talk about the game. Just in all these ways, she's sort of breaking new ground, I think.
Yes, I think that's dead on. All right, let's go to our 2022 redraft. So this was a weird draft. 2020. Excuse me, not 2022. We'll do that in 3 years. So, Ricky, before I randomize our list, is someone who covers the draft and someone who thinks about this, someone who I will I need to DM someone about the draft, I'm going to DM Ricky O'Donnell. When you thought about this draft in real time, what did you think of it?
Yeah, I covered this draft. I wrote a lot about this draft at SB Nation. I thought it was a good draft, not a great draft. I was pretty familiar with this class, covering them, through high school and into this draft. I did a feature on Anthony Edwards, where I talked to Anthony Edwards when he was a high school senior, and I remember being on the phone with him and thinking, this guy's hilarious. And then it sort of became just a big part of his persona, and now he's in Adam Sandler movies and stuff. So it's been really fun to watch his evolution. I did think LaMelo was the best player in the class coming into it. And that looked like it would probably be a good opinion for his first couple of years. Now, not so sure. We'll see. And the one thing I definitely got wrong was I was not a Haliburton fan. I thought Haliburton, can he get enough to the basket enough to be a lead guard? Defensively, are people going to be able to go through him? He has such a thin, wiry frame. I could not have been more wrong about that. Haliburton is tremendous and would certainly be a worthy number 1 overall pick in this redraft. But yeah, I thought it was a decent class, not a great class, but a lot of fun players in it.
All right,
Chris.
So let's do. Yeah, hit me.
No, I have some general 2020 draft thoughts. Did you know that Ricky edited a feature of mine on this draft? We didn't even talk about this beforehand. I did a feature on Obi Toppin that Ricky edited for SB Nation.
This takes me the Obi Toppin stuff really takes me back because there was 4 months where Cleveland people were saying he's a local product, and my guys, he played at Dayton, which is another side of the state. Let's chill. But I'm gonna have to go back and read this feature.
Yeah, I got to talk to him a little bit. It was a weird, and then the real thing that I was gonna say about this class that I think everybody thinks of is it was the longest draft period ever because this was the COVID draft. It happened in October. And it's kind of funny to look back on that because I found this Zach Cram piece at The Ringer that basically broke down how bad it has been. I think it published in November of this year, and I don't really know how differently we all feel. I think some of the top guys have proven themselves even more like Haliburton, but he said the order of this draft class doesn't really matter. The correlation between pick number and wins above replacement for players in the first round had no discernible relationship. And then he highlighted specifically that the bigs were particularly, struggling. So it's insane to think that these people had extra time, and it seemed to be even more of a crapshoot than normal in terms of where players got picked and where they've ended up producing. And I think that's going to bear out because I think, at least looking at my list, a lot of the guys I have were not lottery picks originally.
Yeah. There's a lot of hits in this class that are not lottery picks. There's a lot of picks in this class that come from different places. Just for refresher, here was the top 5 in this draft. Anthony Edwards goes 1 to Minnesota. James Wiseman goes 2 to Golden State. LaMelo Ball goes 3 to Charlotte. Patrick Williams goes 4 to the Bulls. Isaac Okoro goes 5 to Cleveland. All right, I've randomized the list. Here's the order. Brendon, you have the first pick. Ricky, you have the second pick. I have the third pick. Now, we are going to go through the lottery. We'll go to 15 just because keep it even for our stuff here. Do we want to do a snake draft, guys, or a non-snake draft? All right, what do we think?
I think with 3 and non-snake is probably better.
All right.
I might just be saying that because I want 1 and 4 rather than 1 and 6, but
That's fine.
You guys
We'll do non-snake. Brendon, you're on the clock. Who are you going with?
Yeah, I'm gonna not even use a second. Anthony Edwards is my pick. He was the number 1 overall pick, as Ricky said. It was a bit of a surprise at the time. I thought Ricky's piece on him was very good at the time. I thought Jonathan Chark's piece on him the night of that draft was very, very good. And you get a lot of good stuff about them basically just trying to like prove themselves to everybody for why they took this wacky. I mean, it wasn't crazy. He was one of the top 3 picks, but he wasn't necessarily everybody's number 1. And yet he has proven himself to be, I think, to me, far and away, already the most productive player. That's kind of inarguable. But then I think also still maybe the highest ceiling player of anybody out here. I mean, just a two-way star, somebody who I think is one of the future faces of the league and somebody who really is going to be able to be the number 1 on a championship team with what he's able to do when he really locks in defensively, which we've seen at times. His athleticism, his burst, his first step, the dunks we've already seen. If he can hone how he gets to his 3 and he's able to make, the pull up even more reliable, fit in with other star scorers, which he hasn't really been able to do because of injuries and everything else over the course of his career. We're going to be talking about Ant for a long time. Anyone else have thoughts on Anthony Edwards? Come on, guys.
There's only one other guy to me that came close to this, and it really wasn't a debate for me if I was going to get the number 1 pick. Ant is to me like the kind of prototypical star of this class. Like, he had a really kind of slow start to this year, but he's averaging like really good numbers again. He's scored every single year of his career. He's gotten a little bit better every year of his career. And it's like very telling that on a team that already had a very high draft pick in Karl Anthony Towns, that just feels like his team, and that we've already decided that like every decision they make feels like it has to be about Ant. And like I don't, there's nothing about his profile in terms of his size, his 3-level ability, like that I feel really weird about. Like I don't have any doubts about it. We'll see like how good on defense he can get. We'll see kind of how good the playmaking gets. But as like a really high engine scorer who can kind of do everything on the floor, I don't really have any doubts about him as a guy. Like, to me, he had to be number 1.
He's just an athletic freak. I mean, his speed to power blend, ability to go fast, go slow. Like, yeah, I remember doing the reporting on him, and I talked to his trainer when he was in high school, and he was telling me like, oh, this guy would have been the first pick in the NFL draft at like 3 different positions if you put him out there. And that's just like, he has athletic gifts that are elite amongst people who are elite. So I think that's the big thing with him. I think he's a really good shooter and has 3-point percentage is only going to continue to go up. His volume has obviously increased quite a bit over his first 3 years. The question to me is the playmaking. Just because it seems like truly the best players are able to blend scoring and playmaking and use the threat of their scoring to set up their teammates, use the threat of their playmaking to score themselves. That's why Caitlin Clark's so damn good, because she, can blend scoring and playmaking so well. So I want to see that from Edwards, but Edwards is awesome. He's exceeded the hype as a number 1 overall pick, I would say, and yeah, the future is so bright for him.
I'm curious to see what the Wolves decide to do with him and how they decide to build with him, like, and what kind of pivots they make. Like the Gobert thing, that we don't need to relitigate all that, but like that never felt like the perfect fit for me as far as the right big with him.
They need to figure out the other ball handler, I think. I mean, that's the thing to me is like they've telegraphed that they didn't want that to be Russell. They finally get off of him. It's just not going to be Conley by way of age. So what do they see as the best number 2? I mean, I do feel like it's somebody somewhat similar to Conley. There's not a lot of players like him. There's not a lot of players in this day and age that play like that anymore at the point guard spot. So I'm curious to see who his sort of number 1 is from a ball handling standpoint going forward, because I think that'll affect how he develops, and it'll affect, how that team obviously fares long term.
So let's say any like top 5 player in the league out of this, but who's the ideal Anthony Edwards co-star? And you could say like I'm gonna say you can't say Jason Tatum, but you can say Jaylen Brown, something like that, where like we're not gonna say the top 5 players in the league or top 5 MVP candidates, but Who do you guys think would be the ideal Ant-Man co-star?
If we went as a guard, I think Darius Garland would make a ton of sense. Just a guy that is like willing to kind of play off the ball. I think like Haliburton would make sense as well. Just guys that are really crafty off the ball. Big, I find a little bit more challenging to figure out. I think like Jaren Jackson Jr. to me would probably make a lot of sense if you're going to go big. Guy who can stretch, guy who can do a little bit with the ball in his hands, a guy that can really absorb some of the defensive stuff. So to me, I would probably go that direction. It's like J or like a Garland Haliburton kind of guard.
I think Triple J has to be off limits with these conversations because you could say him, just like Tatum. You could say like a lot of those guys for everything. I think you're totally right,
Sure.
Chris. Garland came to mind for me. I actually also thought of Drew Holiday, just somebody that brings enough of the ball handling. Marcus Smart, a player sort of like a 3-and-D ball handling point guard, number one, versatile defender. Not that I think Ant needs to be protected, but I also just think the amount that he can do offensively, you don't want him to have to also be your best defender, so I think it'd be nice to have that. I think offensively Towns is a pretty nice fit with Ant. Defensively there's obviously always going to be questions with Towns, but those would be my answers. I mean, I think it's pretty simple. As long as you're putting spacing around him and, some level of defense, I think he's going to be pretty solid.
Curious to see like how they handle the Town stuff. All right, let's go to our next pick. Ricky, you're up. Who are you picking?
Yeah, I want to go LaMelo here because I'm fiercely loyal to LaMelo. I think we haven't seen the best of his game, but I think you got to give it to Haliburton over LaMelo. He's just been more productive, more consistent. I think he's answered every question I had about him coming into the league, and he's just exceeded every reasonable expectation for himself. I did wonder when he was coming into the league, like, was he shifty enough and powerful enough as a driver to be a lead ball handler, to put pressure on the rim consistently? And he's just figured it out. Like, every part of his game is just, like, pretty complete as a point guard. You can play him on or off the ball. He still brings a lot of, like, connective passing when he's not running high pick and roll all the time. Obviously, the shot has translated wonderfully, so I'm going to go Haliburton.
I think that's the right pick here. I don't think there is this is like my number two pretty clearly. I just think like the way that I think he makes everyone around him better. I think the size, I think the playmaking feel, I think the leaps we've seen him take year to year have just been really, really impressive. And like he went from Sacramento to Indiana and like got bigger and got better and like is been like was an all-star this year. Would have been a guy that if he ended up playing it, didn't miss a ton of time, would have I think been close to like the fringes of all NBA. He's averaging 20 and 10 right now. He's averaging a double and he's averaging 2.5 turnovers per game. Like this guy is just like super careful with the ball in his hands, super trustworthy with the ball in his hands, and he's shooting 40% from 3 on 7 attempts per game, which is a career high by like 2 attempts per game. This guy has made a leap. He's a all-star level guy. He is like the, for whatever Indiana is going to have, whatever they're going to do, they still probably need some lottery luck. That is like the perfect thing for them to pivot into what they're going to be. And to me, he had to be number 2. I know that sounds crazy considering LaMelo is still on the board, but like I think I would much rather have Haliburton than LaMelo at this point.
Yeah, Haliburton jumps from 12. That was where he was originally taken, which that even felt low. I mean, we talked before with the big picture of like, he was a question mark, but I think even in real time, 12 felt like lower than even his pre-draft floor would have ever been expected to be, at least in my recollection. Maybe that's as a fan of the team who picked 10th and did not take him. But what do you guys think?
Who did the Suns take?
Jalen
It's been
Smith?
redacted. I'm not able to share.
Yeah, I knew who. I just wanted to I wanted just to make Brendon say it.
It's been redacted. It's been lost to history. The books are gone. It's like that Italian city that burned down. There's just no records of anything. What I was going to ask is, do we think so Haliburton takes like 21 shots per 100 possessions, field goal attempts. He doesn't get to the line a ton, so really the field goal attempts are a good, in a nutshell, of what he does trying to score. Do we think he has to do more of that on the best version of a team that's centered around him? Like, does he need to, and we haven't seen him really in the playoffs, so there's a version where he does that, and it's just a regular season versus postseason thing. do you think he needs to get into that attack mode? He pulls it out at times, but I watch him sometimes and feel like, especially on that team, his ability to just drive, get into the teeth of the defense, try to finish, try to kick out, rather than sort of the dancing he does on the perimeter, wanting to just do the drop pass to the big man in the pick and roll. I like when he really hits the gas, and I wonder if he needs to do it more consistently as he ages.
Yeah, I don't know if he really has the physical tools to be a consistent downhill driver, which is the reason I faded him when he was in the class. Again, I'm a huge idiot. Obviously, my team should have taken him at 4. If your team should have taken him at 10. But yeah, it's like he's just not like there's like if you look at his recruiting history, he wasn't even ranked in the top 200 of his high school class. And usually that recruiting stuff is done by like, okay, how big are you? How fast are you? How quick twitch is your athleticism when you're attacking the rim? So there is something to him still like having some physical limitations, despite the fact that he's clearly a super productive, super awesome NBA player putting up 20 and 10. So I don't know if he can like give you that level of downhill driving that someone like Anthony Edwards could. To me, like the low-hanging fruit in his game might just be up in the 3-point volume. You know, what if he takes 10 threes a game instead of, what's he taking, 7? I would guess without looking at the numbers. So that could be something, but I don't know. Do you think he needs to be higher usage, Chris?
I think it depends on like what else they get, because like I could see a world where like he leans into more of that like heliocentric direction. But if like Benedict Mathurin like takes a step forward, if like they go get like another like really interesting young player to kind of pair with him, then like maybe no. But I think the answer like also like if he's gonna hit like his ceiling, if he's gonna hit like whatever version of himself that he's going to hit that's going to be like all NBA level, like maybe the answer is yes, that maybe there has to be some more selfishness in what he's doing, right? I think it's possible. I just think it also depends on what Indiana decides they want to do and how they decide they want to build with him.
I think there's something to be said for the fact that he has made Turner into much more of a downhill threat by way of playing, of those two just playing more together, Sabonis being gone, etc. And so he can manufacture more balance to an offense by way of his passing, I think, even if it's not coming from him. And so I do think their roster now isn't doing him a ton of favors with that, because Turner wasn't even really thought of as that type of role man at an elite level until this year. But even aside from him taking that step forward, it's still missing a little bit from their offense, and their roster doesn't have anybody that would obviously do that for you. Buddy Hield, Nembhard, McConnell, a lot of these guys that get a lot of minutes aren't really conducive to playing more of an attacking style. So, it's really year one of Haliburton, the superstar, and I'm excited to see what comes next, but obviously he doesn't have to do anything. He's already very, very good. It just sort of is a question as far as what is his ceiling as a player and how far can his teams go if he's one of the top 1, 2, 3 guys on them. So it's gonna be fun. He's a super crazy player.
All right, I'm up. LaMelo Ball, number 3, has to be LaMelo Ball here. Like, utterly scintillating player, one of the most creative and fun players we have. The advanced numbers like have him as like the second best guy in this class with value of a replacement. Haliburton being won by like a pretty significant margin. Obviously some injury stuff this year, and the team he plays for absolutely stinks. So, like, that, I think, colors it a little bit for me. And, like, I wonder, like, what the path forward in Charlotte is and vis-a-vis, like, how that's going to reflect on him and what that kind of means, whether that's fair or not. But at 3, like, he is clearly, like, an offensive dynamo who can do pretty much anything you want him to do at that end of the floor. And he's going to be, like, one of the best offensive players in the league when he's healthy and when he's available. And the things he can create for others is stupendous. Like, it has to be LaMelo at 3. I don't exactly know, like, where he's going is kind of an interesting question, but that's more about the Hornets to me than it is really about him. What do you guys think about LaMelo?
I never would have thought that he'd be taking almost 11 threes a game. I think he's first or second in 3-point attempts per game and still hitting like 38% of them. His shooting was just such a big point of criticism during the pre-draft process when he was in Australia. His scoring efficiency was like way below average, by the way. So was Anthony Edwards, if I recall correctly, when he was coming out of Georgia. And it was just people would always wonder, how is this shot going to translate for LaMelo? And he's become a really, really good shooter. He also has that rare, like Curry-like ability to just sort of like break the rhythm of the game. Like he'll just jack a three when you're not expecting it. Obviously, if you're taking 11 a game, a lot of them are going to be on pull-ups and not spot-ups. And just the way that loosens up the opposing defense, especially when you're 6'8", you got the ball on a string like him. He might be the best tall ball handler in the league. Best ball handler in the league over 6'8". There might be some other guys in contention for that title, but he's certainly worthy of being in the mix. LaMelo's awesome. We have not seen the best of him at all, in my opinion, and I just hope his body holds up better than his brother's.
Ricky, I promised you when we invited you on and had you come on that no Bulls jokes, and you made it first. So now I feel like we're here.
Yeah, actually, that's the second one because we already got a should have taken him at 4 joke in there too, which we haven't even gotten to the guy that the Bulls actually took. I'm not sure when we will. We'll see. But the interesting thing to me about LaMelo is he has the mid range a little bit because of his floater, and I think because of his ability to navigate in traffic and whatnot a little bit better than some of the other similar types of players. And I'm interested to see how that part of his game kind of evolves and expands because his assists went up. We mentioned the 3-pointers per game went up, so his scoring overall has gone up as well. And that's all trending in the right direction. But, what does he do to really round that out, I think will be fascinating. I think, talk about team construction around him hasn't done him a ton of favors. I think Mark Williams is a pretty fun pick and roll pairing for him next season when they're both, I would imagine, playing a ton of minutes together. We'll see. It's really tough. He's probably the hardest to separate from team context and his own injuries because we just haven't seen as much of him, and we definitely haven't seen a lot of him in a great context compared to some of these other players. Oh, number 4 is me, huh?
Yeah. I was gonna let's properly transition, Brendon. You're up, number 4. Who you taking?
Oh, so I think we have our first wild card, and I think we have our first player who is not part of why we wanted to do this draft is that all of these guys are eligible for extensions this upcoming offseason. And I think we're finally to the might not get a max portion of the conversation, or at least, on the cusp, and I'm not sure if anyone else will out of this draft. And my pick is Devin Vassell.
Love this pick.
Yeah, so not a player, another player who has had an injury-riddled season this year, but shooting 39% on 7 threes a game, 19 points per game overall. He's almost doubled his assists and really just increased everything in terms of workload without sacrificing a ton of efficiency. Turnovers haven't really gone up too bad, although they've kind of doubled as well. He is a player who I didn't think would make good on some of the scoring ability, the pull-up shooting ability this early in his career, considering he didn't play a ton as a rookie and then this year with the injuries. But he is already a guy who can go get you 20, can score at multiple levels, just somebody you trust with the ball in your hand. And, the defense on a better team, I think, is always going to be there. He creates turnovers at a high level. All the things that he did coming out of Florida State, I don't think there's any reason to believe won't be there. He's 6'5" with crazy wingspan for his size. I just think we have a real two-way playmaker and centerpiece type of player on a young team that's growing. I'm excited to see what Vassell is, and I feel great. I think this is where I want him. This is where I'm taking him.
Love it. I think, there were probably bigger names left on the board, but Vassell is like someone who is just going to be beloved by diehards because his game is exceeds, his impact exceeds the numbers in so many ways. And now his numbers are pretty awesome. Being a high volume 3-point shooter who also provides terrific perimeter defense and who not only can play a wing stopper role, but is also just so good in kind of a free safety role of roaming and helping off and, like you said, forcing turnovers, turning defense into offense. I would love to see him with more structure around him. And man, if the Spurs get Wemby, that's just sort of the perfect guy you want around Wemby as a young perimeter player to build with him. A guy who I don't know if Vassell is your true number 1, But I think that he is an elite co-star, and he kind of has like all of the. He just has the skill set and all of the abilities to just like scale up or scale down, and to thrive in sort of any role you put him in.
Really nice size at 6'5", 200. Like maybe a little small to defend up, but they also have Keldon Johnson there. Like that is the team with these guys that are maybe not the biggest superstars on their own. The Spurs have like a lot of role guys in Sohan and Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell that I'm like, they get Wemby, like things are humming. Things are going to be humming a little bit if they get all those guys in there. So I love that pick. Ricky, you're up at 5. Who are you taking?
I'll take Desmond Bane.
Yeah.
Obviously, last pick in the first round in this draft, and as a 4-year guy coming out of TCU, he's really just been able to hit the ground running. All-star already, correct? I believe he was an all-star. So, yeah, I think that Bane, he gives you shooting, versatile shooting at a high level. Like, you could run him off screens. He can shoot threes off the dribble. He is accurate off super high volume. So with him, like, to me, he's probably one of the better shooters in the league. Is anyone going to push back on that? Like, there are some shooting specialists, but for him to be more than a specialist and still an elite 3-point shooter, I think that is great. I think that how the Grizzlies have sort of developed him to create a little bit more on ball with all the time Morant has missed over the last couple years has made him even more valuable. Like, he's someone who you can just give him the ball in a pinch and he can give you a bucket at this point. And by the way, he's pretty awesome on defense too. So, again, probably not a lead guy, but an awesome number 2 around a more heliocentric superstar and someone who could just fit into so many different types of team structures.
Bane is 30 of 60 on corner threes this year. I just found that. He's shooting 50% on corner threes. Yeah, he's a filthy shooter. He has been that since he set foot on an NBA court. My question on this guy is, well, combining our last two, who gets more money between Vassell and Bane this summer?
Bane.
Bane, for sure. Just because they've won at a higher level.
Sure. Well, the Spurs I just think of as kind of who else are they giving their money to? They're in a rebuild type of thing. They've tended to pay their guys, although I don't feel like they've overpaid anybody. DeJounte, Keldon, well, maybe Keldon, but they don't tend to go crazy with it. Yeah.
Keldon,
they don't overdo it.
That's fine.
Yeah. You're probably right. I think Bane has that reputation, and his agent can probably do a little more saying, hey, he's a starting player on a championship contending team, whereas Vassell, with the injuries and the team not being great, it's sort of an open question, what does it really mean type of thing with his production. But I think it'll be close. Do we think Bane gets a max?
I don't think he should, but does he have the Grizzlies does he have like the leverage on the Grizzlies? Like I don't know. It's like the first extension is kind of tricky. I don't know if he is like a max guy, but like should he get more than Jordan? Should his agent be like, I should get more than Jordan Poole? The answer is yes. That his agent should be like, I should absolutely get more money than Jordan Poole did. Like that's the baseline here. It's like he should get more than both Hero and Poole, in my opinion.
I was going to say we'd all take him over Hero, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
He's getting a max, I think, and if not, it's a weird ability by the Grizzlies to give him a hometown discount, but otherwise, I would expect him to get a max, and also a rookie max. Not that much money. The real
it's the fun
hefty
max.
Price tag is the third contract, and if you get a max on the fourth contract, that's when it's a real big number. But rookie max, he'll live up to that.
Yeah.
The one thing I would say about maybe why he wouldn't is Jaren Jackson Jr. only got 4 years, 105. And so, you tend to see kind of the baseline that gets set within the team. It's like Ja got a max, Jaren got 4 for 105. Maybe you split the difference with Bane, but his agent definitely has a good leg to stand on to push for one. And if they don't get it done this summer, I guess, he could go into restricted free agency and try to get one next summer.
Yeah. All right, let's go to number 6. Couple names you could go with here, I think, that are in contention, but I'm going to go based on just production, and it's maybe a little bit in the moment of this year. But I'm gonna go Emmanuel quickly.
Whoa.
Emmanuel Quick, yeah. Look, I think this is where the draft gets a little eye of the beholder, but I think the two-way stuff with Quickly, I think the poise we've seen from Quickly, I think the size he has over some of his other counterparts, I think the shot making, like I just think he's taken like a leap this year, and I'm just very in on this guy being like a rotation player. I don't know what he's gonna get paid. I don't know, like maybe the playoffs changes the opinion of him a little bit. And he's averaging 14 a game. It's not like he's like a 20-point a game guy or anything like that, but I just have really
The
come to
playoffs
like
when
his
he
two-way
shuts
game.
down Donovan Mitchell. Is that what you're talking about? The playoffs, Chris?
Brendon, if that happens, I will buy you whatever beer you want because I think Mitchell's probably just gonna like torch the Knicks in that series. Ricky, just because Brendon and I have already had this, Knicks or Cavs in this series, how many games? On the spot,
I would take
know,
the
but-
Cavs probably in 6.
Okay.
It does feel like that series would set up for LOL Knicks for not getting Donovan Mitchell, and Donovan Mitchell torches them. Even though, perhaps a good move by the Knicks not to get Donovan Mitchell because their timeline wasn't exactly where Cleveland's was. What I wonder in that series, like, what can Randall really do against Mobley?
Exactly.
Because Randall really has to drive a lot of their half-court offense. And
Yeah.
like he'll try to play through Mobley, but like Mobley can step off him and still provide such great defense with his length. So Mobley's just such a damn matchup nightmare, trump card, whatever you want to call him.
He's ridiculous. But on this pick, Brandon, just so you know, you're wrong. You picked the Knicks in 7 and you're wrong. But I think there are other guys you could go with here. There are two. We will see. There are two other guys on this list that I had, but I went with Quickly.
Quickly scoring 20. You said he's not a 20-point per game guy. He's scoring 20 a game in March. 415
I know, but like
minutes,
for
13
the
games
season.
played. He's averaging 20, and he's shooting 46% from the field, 37 from 3. Yeah, I hear you over the course of the season, and March basketball is not what you always want to extrapolate from. I guarantee you his agent will be, but he's, I think, on the upswing, and I guess that's what I'm saying is I wouldn't count out his scoring going up. It's probably not going to be 20, but I think he is slotting himself in to be basically a perfect, 4th or 5th starter on a great team. I mean, he already is that, and he's going to continue to be super valuable wherever he ends up.
All right, let's go to 7. Brendon. Brendon, you're back up. Who are you taking?
Yeah. So this is not, obviously, we're not forming teams. I just want to clarify that to everybody.
Yeah.
So it's not like we have to make them all match up. So I'm very torn. I'm going to go Jaden McDaniels. I don't want to be too prisoner of the moment with that pick, but I love what he's become as a player. We talked about I was not around this draft as much as Ricky was, but I was able to be at a lot of games. I was able to see McDaniels in person. I also saw Ant in person. He really sucked in the game that I saw him. Jaden McDaniels wasn't great either, and watching him, his sort of like very internal kind of attitude on the court really caught me off guard watching him in person, and I misinterpreted it as sort of, he's not taking control, he's not taking over, what's going on, why is he not using his obvious athletic freak abilities to take over games more often? And we've just sort of watched him feel out his way through the NBA, make impact through rebounding, defense, shot blocking, all that stuff early, and then start to grow his game from there. He's a reliable shooter, I think, as a spot-up guy spacing the floor, and now starting to add a little bit more on the ball. They're running plays for him. They're trying to incorporate him as a real part of their team, and he's handled every single thing that's been thrown at him. So it's a little bit of a bet on his continued upswing here, but I think you could convince me in another year, in next March, if we did this, that he's even higher.
Totally, I love that pick. That's who I was going to take with the next pick if you did not take him. I think every team really wants a 4 who can provide some rim protection and some floor spacing. And he does that. Block a game, steal a game, nearly 40% from 3. I did a list way back in the day when he was in high school of the best long-term basketball prospects in America. and he was the only player in this high school class who was on the list because Anthony Edwards reclassified. So for Anthony Edwards was supposed to be a year younger. So I had him as 10th on that list. And at first, it looked like that was going to be a big miss for me because he was sort of underwhelming in his year at Washington. Didn't do a ton as a rookie, but there's a reason the Wolves didn't put him in the Gobert deal. I think that he just slots in so nicely next to a center like Towns, being able to give you a little bit more defensive punch and proven to be a very good floor spacer when Edwards has the ball in his hand. So I love McDaniels. I think that was the right pick.
Minnesota gets a lot of crap for including Walker Kessler in that trade. I think people ignore the fact that they made a very big point of not including McDaniels. Not to say that the Gobert trade is good now or something, but that was smart, and they made a very concerted effort to do it. They gave up Vanderbilt, even though you would have liked to also keep him, but they said, it's not. That's the one thing in this entire building that we're tying down that you cannot have, and it proved to be pretty smart. So I don't know, give those guys a 1% more credit than you are. There you go.
That's Tim Conley's pitch for why you don't fire him in 2 years.
Yeah, he hired me the other day. Did I not tell you guys? I'm his pitch man now. Right. I'm doing PR.
Good. That's good. Better than doing it for Rojas. All right, Ricky, you're up. Who's your next pick?
I was looking at McDaniels, and I didn't have another pick prepared, but I believe Tyrese Maxey's still on the board.
He is. Tyrese Maxey's still on the board, and this is the way to go, I think.
So Tyrese Maxey is the pick. Cannot believe he lasted to 21 in this draft. It was an obvious mistake. I was doing draft grades the night of that draft, and I said this is very obviously the best value pick in the draft. And of course, I was wrong because it was probably Bain who went 30th and provided just as much value and went higher in a redraft. But Tyrese Maxey's been really good. The speed with the ball in his hands is just unbelievable. He's one of the fastest players in the league. His ability to just dust a defender off a with this just standstill burst. He does not need to get momentum going. He can just hit the gas right away, get to the rim. That's super impressive. The shooting, who saw I thought he'd be a good shooter. I thought he'd shoot better than he did at Kentucky. He's hit 42% of his threes each of the last 2 years at a high volume of attempts. He's a phenomenal shooter. I thought he'd be good. I didn't know if he'd be 42% on 6 a game good. In watching him at Kentucky so much, you could almost see it because he was long on everything, and he sort of shoots like a flat ball to the point where, just shooting the shot a little further back from the NBA line, I think helps him because at Kentucky, everything was just a line drive off the back of the rim. Defensively, big questions still. He is long, though. He's pretty strong for his size. He's got wiry strength. Not really a point guard. What's his best role? Open question. I think
it's what makes Philly so interesting with him because he can play off a Harden who's just in this creator mold and he has Embiid and he can just pick his spots. In games he'll just have 6-9 in a row and it's oh, I did what I'm supposed to do. But he doesn't have to be overburdened to do a bunch of other stuff. It's a really nice fit for him.
I feel like they kind of. I mean, I don't want to, we don't have to go on a whole Sixers tangent, but is there a little bit of him or Tobias Harris? I know that I guess his contract wouldn't kick in until after Harris's is over, but, they probably would want to keep that asset rolling over too, and they have Harden to worry about. But I think that's curious because they obviously can't continue to pay everybody a lot of money, including Maxey adding into that at a, 20-something plus $1 million contract. So that's a little interesting. The defense to me, it's I've always been. It's just that he's small. I mean, he was a good defender in high school. I feel like from what I remember watching of him back then, when everyone was his size, and I don't think he doesn't play hard or anything like that. It's just he's 6'1" and not exactly super stout or anything like that either. So. I think he is somebody you're definitely going to be able to trust. Maybe it's a 6-man role or something like that, but he's already proven himself to be super steady. Chris, you're up.
I'm going to go Onyeka Okongwu. I really like his game. I really like what he can be as a defender. I know we haven't seen him get to start in Atlanta because they have Clint Capella, but I just like the frame. I like the smarts. I like just kind of the profile. He's still 22. He's still pretty young. I just like believe that this is a guy that's going to be able to like play in the playoffs for a team, and like whether that's Atlanta, whether he ends up somewhere else, I don't know how you do an extension with him based on just like how little he's like getting given a chance to really own that position for them. Notably, this is the healthiest he's been this year too. Played 73 games so far this year. Played 50 as a rookie, 48 last year. That feels like a big deal to me. I'm just a really big fan of how he plays and what he is as a center. I know a little undersized. I know all of that, but really smart, really skilled. I believe this is a guy that's going to be able to like hang as like a 5 in playoff series going forward. I'm just a big fan, and after like we're at the point of the draft where I'm like there's other guys that are good. There's other guys we'll talk about, but I just believe in him as like a playoff guy.
I think he probably gets the Brandon Clark contract or something like that if they get it done this summer. 4 for $60, somewhere around there. I could see that. Ricky, what you got on Okongwu?
Yeah, Kongo's great because he's just able to play so many different schemes defensively. Like some guys are just like drop big. Some guys, are quick enough to defend the perimeter but don't have the ability to like absorb contact at the rim. And I feel like he just gives you so much versatility with what you're going to play defensively. Offensively, I do think, you wish he was a little bit bigger. That would probably make his lob catching, his rebounding a little bit more effective. But I'd love to see Okongwu in a bigger role. I think, it's time. We've sort of seen what he can be. Brandon Clark is a really interesting comp for him. And Clark's another guy who's just he's just a little bit smaller than what you want for, the ideal guy in that spot. But I'd love to see Okongwu in a bigger role. I think he's got a lot more potential than he's shown thus far.
All right, I'm up at number 10, and I'm going with Alexei Pokusevski. Poku. Give it to me. I was genuinely impressed by what I saw from him this season. He's been hurt for a while. He played 31 games this year, but he upped his 3-point percentage to 38, 44% from the field. Everything else was basically the same. He upped his blocks quite a bit. So I just felt like we were starting to see him realize the potential of what he was coming out of the depths of European basketball when he was drafted out of Serbia. Just a guy who you can really count on as more of a connector and pick and pop player. I think he is somebody that, as everybody sort of jokes about how Oklahoma City is a little bit aimless with their small ball basketball, and we say, oh, Chet was supposed to be there. Poku was there early in the season, and I even think him being there would have made them, not that they need it, they've been winning anyway because Shea is a freak and their young guys have gotten better, but even he would have given them a little bit more structure. What Dario Saric is doing for them now, he could have continued to do and has a higher ceiling. I think he's a real player now, and I think he still has a pretty high ceiling considering how raw he was. He's only 21, so it's a little bit of a silly pick, but I actually really do believe in him to continue to really be a piece for what they're building as they actually try to turn the page toward winning.
That's going to be on the graphic, Brendon.
He kind of got good defensively this year when he was still playing.
Yeah.
He was blocking a lot of shots. Yeah, that's probably not who I would have picked in that spot, but I love the pick because when he entered the league, he was the youngest player in the league. So to still be 21, he's like Brandon Miller's age, and he's got 3 years of experience already. So, yeah, that's a good pick that could age even better a few years from now.
I thought you were going to say worse, and that's why I started to laugh. But he was 17th in this draft, which is kind of crazy to think how high he went.
Look, the draft is weird, but value, I get it. Ricky, you're up. Who you picking?
All right, I'm going to go with the guy who got cut this year. Give me Isaiah Joe, who has been another part of the Thunder's sort of turnaround. Just an insanely good shooter. High volume, super quick release, can hit from anywhere on the floor. I think at this point, maybe it's because I've watched too many Bulls games this year and they have nobody who can even attempt a three-pointer. But you just need volume shooting, especially around really high-level players. And Isaiah Joe is a high-volume, highly accurate shooter. Not too surprised Doc couldn't find a spot for him because that's kind of Doc's MO, but I think that Joe's he is in. Look at his on-off splits in OKC this year. He's made all their lineups significantly better. I think he's going to be a piece for them long term, and I'll go with him.
He's a super high IQ player too. When you watch him out there, the Suns have played the Thunder like 5 times in the past week, it feels like. So I've watched, and he's killed them every single time. So I've gotten to see a lot of his best moments. So maybe I'm overreacting to those, but when he's out there, he makes defensive plays, he creates steals, he has super long arms, and I think that those on-off splits aren't lying. Like he really kind of completes lineups that need his shooting, and he doesn't sacrifice too much on defense. So that is a bold pick, but I like it.
His contract, just for the record, is like, I don't know who advised him to sign this, even though he's coming off of getting cut, but he signed a 3-year, $6 million contract in October. That he'd made 1.8 this year. He's going to make 1.9, basically right at $2 million next year, and he has a team option for $2.164 million in 2024-2025. Who advised him to sign this contract? At like, what are we doing here? Isaiah
Sounds like
Joe's
Sam
agent.
Hinkie is his agent. Yeah, that's
Like,
the classic, right? That's the special.
What are we doing here? If this is a guy that was like hitting like the market this summer, a good team would be like, here's part of our MLE or something, and be like, we need shooting. Like, here's $5 million a year at the minimum. What are we doing here? I don't understand this. Don't sign long contracts like that when you're like 20 years old. Dumb. All right. I don't understand how neither of you picked this guy, but it worked out for me. I'm gonna take Josh Green.
Yeah.
Like, has turned into like a really
I'm
nice role
nervous
player
that
with
everybody
Dallas.
in Dallas broke him. That's why I didn't take him, to answer
Look,
your question.
the
I'm worried
vibes,
that it's just over already as quickly as it started this season.
Look, Brendon, they are just out here questioning authority, okay?
I didn't
like
name
doing
names. I mean, what if I was talking about
I
Jason
didn't either.
Kidd?
I didn't
Okay.
either. Look, the
right.
vibes with the Dallas Mavericks are not good at the moment. But Josh Green is just like turning into like a nice player. Like, I obviously, the Bane thing goes down is the thing there, but 40% on threes this year, play makes, does all of this stuff where like this guy is a winning playoff contributing basketball player, really smart basketball player. Took a little bit of time obviously to grow up, but like that's like a dude for them. And wherever I don't know exactly how you evaluate him on a contract. I think that can still be kind of tricky. But this is just a guy that has actually really developed into a nice piece. It took a little bit, but he's a contributing winning basketball player. Better on threes this year, better on twos this year. There's very little I don't like about where Josh Green is at right now as a guy to play off of Luka or to be with Dallas as they kind of go forward there.
Sick athlete. That's the first thing that always jumped out about him. I saw him play in high school, actually, on the UAA circuit when I was doing a grassroots trip. Watched him at Arizona quite a bit, too. And I was really blown away at just how much more craft he has this year than he did earlier in his career. Getting into, mid-range pull-ups, being able to get downhill more effectively, and being able to get to his finishing package. So he's been awesome. I think he's another guy you wish he was a couple inches bigger, then he could be like a real wing stopper. What is he, like 6'5", maybe?
He's listed at 6'6", but like doesn't really feel 6'6".
He's really intriguing. Between him and Hardy, Dallas has at least some hope for optimism despite everything that's happened over the last month.
One thing I would say in his stats that pop out to me is something to watch going forward. He's at cleaning the glass, has him at 46% on non-corner threes this year. That is like a very, very high number. And if that drops a little bit, and maybe he's better on corner threes next year, and that kind of levels out to some degrees at 39% this year. Like maybe that like takes away a little bit, but I still would trust the overall package.
Yeah, Sean Miller tried his hardest to break this guy. I watched him a lot in Tucson at Arizona. I think I saw him, a handful, half dozen times live, and I really didn't see it. I thought that if the ball handler sort of role that he came up as in high school wasn't really going to be there for him anymore, and the jumper wasn't amazing, I had just questions about sort of what he was going to be more so than if he had talent, and he's figured it out. He's even better as a three-point shooter this year than he was in college, so he's made legit improvements there, and he's not going to be a primary ball handler, but he's definitely good if he's your third or fourth best ball handler on the court, and that's what he's been with Dallas a lot, and that role seems really perfect for him. I hope they keep him. I think he fits really well with what I would imagine is a perfect Luka team, although I'm not sure anyone there knows what that actually is.
Look, if they don't keep him, like Luka should just demand to be traded like the next day. Like, what are you doing if you're not keeping like the one good player you've drafted aside from like Hardy? Like that's the whole point of like hitting on some of those draft picks. So they.
I mean, I think
I
they
don't know
would
what to do
re-sign
there.
him. When I said if they keep him, I was thinking potentially another trade, but we'll see.
Well, all right, Brendon, you're up. We got 3 more picks. Who we going here?
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna go with KJ Martin here, who I just think has turned into a really, really solid two-way role player. He has amazing hops, as everybody sees in highlights week to week, but also has turned himself into a pretty solid three-point shooter. Another guy who can create turnovers on defense. If you're asking him to, space the floor, occasionally cut or, crash the boards on offense, and then, be a forward defender on defense, I feel like you could do a lot worse for a role player. And I also just love the confidence of demanding a trade from the Houston Rockets in year 3 of your career. So I love all of it.
I would also want to get out of the Houston Rockets situation, though, if I'm being honest. I'm like the opposite.
No,
of James Harden.
I respect the confidence. I also respect the accuracy of the belief. It's just it's right on all counts.
Yes. All right, Ricky, your last
right.
pick. Who are we going with?
Yep.
I'll go Pat Will here. Patrick Williams.
Wow,
I think this is
okay.
about probably where he should have gone. What pick is this? Like 13 or
This
14?
is we're at 14. So this is like officially this would be the last pick of the lottery. I'm gonna have like the first pick outside the lottery.
This is where Patrick Williams was projected to go up until a week before the draft, when the Pistons were like, "Oh, we're going to take him at 7," and then the Bulls on draft day were like, "We're going to take him at 4." The best is yet to come for Patrick Williams, I think, and I think he has made some solid improvements this year. Last year, he gets hurt in the 5th game of the season, going up for a dunk. Mitchell Robinson undercuts him. He breaks his wrist. Came back for the playoffs. But it was just really an incomplete season for him. And for a guy who was the youngest American-born player in the NBA his rookie year, only behind Poku as the youngest player in the league, he just needed some reps. This year he's played every game, so he's proven his durability. I think you could now definitively say he's a plus on the defensive end. He is another guy who, as a 4, can provide some rim protection. I didn't think that he'd be able to hold up as a wing stopper as well as he has, because I thought he was a little slow laterally in terms of getting over screens. But he can play multiple roles defensively. I think he's been pretty good in the wing stopper role. I think he's pretty good as like a weak side supplemental rim protector. Offensively, very good three-point shooter if he's wide open. If someone puts any sort of closeout on him, he's going to pump fake into a travel. But if he's open, he'll hit the shot, and his shooting numbers, both from the three-point line and the free throw line, have been really good all year. He's also pretty good at like getting into his mid-range game. The Bulls don't really like to let him do that because the Bulls lead the league in mid-range shots as it is, and they really need like a higher volume player, a higher volume three-point shooter in his role. But I still think there's a lot to Pat that we haven't seen yet. Also, like, there's just not a lot of oxygen in the Bulls' offense with 3 high-usage offensive players like DeRozan, Levine, and Vucevic, especially for someone who, like, let's say, doesn't have the alpha mentality. I think that Patrick Williams on another team, he could be more suited to put up more consistent numbers. My dream is for Patrick Williams to average 15 points a game for 1 month, let alone for the whole year. He's never done it. I don't know if he ever will do it. But I'd like to believe it's possible. I think he just has too many enticing flashes offensively and too many different ways you could use him. You use him as a roll man, as a spot-up man. He can create a little bit off the pick and roll, get into his mid-range. He is a really bad one-footed leaper, which is one thing I've noticed. Like, I think that's why his finishing isn't always great. He's great off 2 feet. If he gets time to load up, he can hammer home a dunk. But 1 foot, not quite as quick. But yeah. I'll go.
It feels like the poor man's Paolo. Is that a reasonable description?
Yeah, really poor man's Paolo. Paolo's really good.
Yeah,
but
just
yeah,
trying to be nice
do,
to Patrick.
I do like that.
Like, are we talking like Aldi Paolo? By the way, can we just talk
Sure.
for a second?
Dollar store.
Paolo Banchero having Huevos Bancheros, like PEs of his Tatum 1 is an A+ move, and we need like a brunch-themed like line of basketball stuff. I'm just like, that's just for me personally, but Huevos Banqueros is like really incredible work by Nike, and I haven't seen enough talk about this, so I just wanted to make sure that this got mentioned before it became untimely. He's like incredible. I'm not even like a big like shoe guy like that, but like Huevos Banqueros, that's just really good. Is he a change of scenery? Is Pat Will like a change of scenery guy, or is this like a Bulls can figure it out with him guy?
Yeah, I just think like there's just not a lot of oxygen for him on offense. Like you got 3 guys who suck up so many of the shots. He's kind of a little bit timid as it is offensively. But I think you could say coming into this year, it's like, okay, he's theoretically good defensively, but is he actually good? And this year, I'm ready to say Patrick Williams actually good defensively. Now, if he can ever operate at above a 15% usage rate, I mean, it's over. But hasn't been able to do that to this point of his career.
That's fair. All right, my last pick of this little exercise. Some names that I'm not picking but I think are worth kind of looking at as names here. Isaac Okoro is not who I'm picking, but I think he's actually had a nice little year here. He looks like he's going to be like a guy who gets like a second and maybe like a third contract. That's a win considering some of the shot stuff with him was really rough. I think you could look at, I think like it's not who I would do, but if you wanted to say James Wiseman's potential is still worth looking at, I think like he would certainly be in play here. I don't think that's an insane thing to kind of think about. I think you could look at Denny Avdija, who I think has had like a kind of an all right year with Washington in certain aspects. But I'm going to go Cole Anthony. I'm just like I realized picking Cole Anthony quickly if I was like actually building a team, which we're not, is sort of redundant. But I like what Cole Anthony is. I like the confidence. I like the three-point shooting. I like that he feels like a guy that he's gonna have like just a really nice career as a bench scorer, as kind of a microwave kind of guy. I know what I'm getting in him. I kind of know like exactly what he is, and I think he knows what he is, right? Like I think he just kind of understands. Like,
I think he thinks he's like 3 times as good as he is, and I don't even mean that in a disrespectful way.
That's
yeah, it's true, but it's accurate when you watch him. Like the guy thinks he's
great.
Superstar. You need those.
Look, this was like a really like high thought of prospect. I think Ricky can correct me on that, but I think he came into college like very high up on the lists. And then he obviously doesn't, and he's picked much later. They got the 15th overall pick in the 2020 draft. And he's not like going to be like an all-star or anything like that with Orlando. Like he's obviously going to be, if he ends up staying there, he goes elsewhere, he's going to be like a bench microwave guy. But I just like what he provides. And I don't know how scalable he is as on a good team. I think that's kind of an open question. But I like generally kind of what I know what I'm getting from Cole Anthony. Would you guys have picked somebody different?
I'll just never forget the putting on Tim's in the dunk contest.
Yeah.
That was the defining Cole Anthony moment as far as I'm concerned. Surprised Saddiq Bey didn't go.
I'm a little... So, number one, that dunk contest, I was there in person. It sucked, and I forgot that happened until you just said that. Number two, Saddiq Bey is like... He has things I really like, and I think like the 3-point shooting and the size is enough for a flyer. Some of the stuff with him just never making a ton of twos is just like weird for me as a guy. Like, I just don't totally understand that. How he looks in Atlanta could totally like change kind of my sway in him, because I kind of like him as maybe a closing fit over this version of John Collins that's just like not really making shots the way you would perhaps like. But what he kind of does from here, I think, will be kind of interesting. But certainly, like if you're talking about like he had like a 50-point game, like that's a guy who can get him up and can absolutely make a ton of threes. So I don't think that he's shooting. Holy crap, he's shooting 46% from. Excuse me, he's shooting 57.8% as an effective field goal percentage this year, 44.2% on threes with Atlanta so far. So maybe I should have picked Saddiq Bey, but I
thought about taking him over Patrick Williams and was like, I kind of like Patrick Williams' defensive upside more than the higher volume shooting from Bey. But Bey's pretty good. If Bey's not going in the top 15 in this draft, maybe this draft is better than we thought it was.
Yeah. The stubborn part of me wanted to pick Precious Achiuwa, but it's year 3. Haven't really seen it consistently. I'm enticed. I'm intoxicated by him, but he's 23 now, and it just hasn't ever really come together. So, but that would have been my next pick if we kept it going.
Yeah. Then after that, I think you get into like once you get through those guys, you get through Okoro. I think you're
Wiseman,
Xavier Tillman, baby. Xavier Tillman playing a key role for Memphis.
Tillman in this class. This is where we'll end the Tillman. Tillman. He is 9th in this class in value over replacement. 9th. I don't know why that surprised me. B-Ball Paul 16th for whatever that's worth. Someone should have taken B-ball Paul.
I think that's an indictment of the stat more than the draft class, to be honest with you.
Yes. Jalen Smith is 21st.
Yeah, great.
All right, well, we'll edit there. Ricky, anything you want to plug from the great work you're doing over SB Nation as we get out of here?
Not really. You can find anything I write about college hoops or the NBA on SBNation.com. And read my guy JP Acosta's stuff and Mark Schofield's stuff and James DeTore's stuff. And we're still here. We're still doing it. So I'm very tired. March Madness is a tiring time for me. But it's super fun.
Yes.
I was in KC for the Elite Eight. That rocked. Read
Yep.
about Miami. You can check that out if you want to.
Really good story.
So, yeah.
NBA draft season coming up. Very excited to keep reading Ricky's mocks and pick his brain on different when he gets a random text about like a second round prospect, or I'm like, Amoni Bates, second round pick, yes, and he'll be like, Chris, just stop. Like, okay, thumbs up. He's like the opposite of Evan Mobley's body type in terms of arm length. So I feel like it would just be fun to see like the T-Rex arms and then like the longest arms in the NBA, like kind of like super long guy in the court together. Personally. That's just, like, for me personally, though. That would just be great. Brendon, take us out.
Yeah, follow us on social wherever you are. We are Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and follow or subscribe wherever you're listening or finding the show. We'll be back later this week for one more episode as we head toward the playoffs.
Peace out, everybody.